So Ahmed Aldoori is one of my favorite artists to look at when it comes to painting or sketching or drawing. I've been looking at his work forever, since way before I started doing Ergo Josh and all that on my YouTube channel. And it's been incredible to see how much he's grown, even though he was already super good when I started looking at him back like 2016, 2017. But today I want to talk about what I really love about his artwork and try to actually show you guys how I approach studying him in particular when it comes to how do I include the things that I like about his work into my own work. And in case you don't know, he is, I think, maybe mostly known for his YouTube channel. He's got a ton of subscribers, 262K now. He's not as active as he used to be back in the day, but I remember watching all of his medcasts where he would have these little podcasts and just talk about stuff. He's got a wealth of information. He's got so much experience, so much connections in the industry. Somebody should really check out and watch all this stuff too, like I did. But yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into how I'm going to approach this study. So right before we start getting into the painting, I just wanted to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Just look at this, guys. This is awesome. I'll talk more about this, but I just love this. But before I get into the voiceover, because I painted this, I'm not going to paint it while I talk because I took this pretty seriously. But I want to show you exactly what I'm looking at. So I'm really interested in his subject matter as of late, and his mermaid stuff. And so I felt really inspired by that. And I really wanted to take a closer look, a deep dive into his lighting and how he paints. I'm assuming his methodology, because I don't really study too much of his videos, but more of just the final work itself and the results and what I like about it. Alright guys, so I'm using Clip Studio Paint to go ahead and do this painting, and I wanted to start this off by saying that this is my attempt at incorporating what I love about his work into mine. The goal isn't to have something that I want to be able to trick people into thinking that Ahmed Aldoori actually painted it. I don't want to go that close, right? That would just be impossible anyway. But the goal here is to look really closely at his work and try to, figure out the components of it that I love and how do I actually approach that for myself. So I started off here doing something I don't usually do at all, which is starting off with a silhouette. Usually when I approach my sketches, as you guys already know, I just like to go ahead and start drawing it and quickly get something on the canvas so I can start to approximate and understand forms. Really quick, by the way, apologies for any background noise. I'm trying to record this while I'm looking at the actual speed paint, so pausing it is just going to be too much of a pain. So as you can see here, I'm getting the forms down pretty close. I really like how the silhouette and everything looks right now. Like the way this looks, it looks like I actually know what I'm doing, but in reality, I'm really trying my best to do something different, something that I don't normally do. And that's why this piece really ended up taking 5 hours, just about 5 hours, you'll see. And I have almost the entire process recorded here for you guys. And that's because, basically what I'm trying to do here is do something new, but also try to emulate this guy, Ahmed Aldoori, who has years of experience on me, who's very talented, way more accomplished artist, way more skilled. And I'm trying to capture that in just, one piece of art. And so not only did it take me forever to do it, but of course I didn't actually end up at that perfect level. And that's something that, I hope you guys understand as well, if you feel inspired to do these kind of studies. So right now I'm going in I tried my best to kind of block out some shadows to give myself an idea for the forms. But I feel like for me, that's not really that helpful because I always change the face, because of like the aesthetic that I like. So it didn't really help. As you can see here, this is something I'm always doing, like trying my best to make sure that the eyes are straight and aligned properly. Right now, you may be wondering like, okay, where does Ahmed Aldoori come in? But that's going to come in a little bit later because it's mostly about the painting, but I've already spent a considerable amount of time studying his work for myself. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying my best to remember that. I know sketching is really big, and having those sketchy lines as part of the painting is something that I really admire and enjoy from his work. And so I'm, trying to say, okay, let me do my own sketch the way I would do it and try to be loose but also conservative so that I don't end up having to erase so much or blend so much away. One of the artists that I actually really like that Ahmed, I feel like is very similar to the way he sketches is Eliza. I'll try to link her in the description or a comment. But for her work, her sketch just evolves into the final thing. And I absolutely love that. And I feel like Ahmed has some similar tendencies with his sketches. They kind of just evolve, even though a lot of it does go away. Whereas with Eliza, they do stick around. That's something that I really, really like. And I want to be part of how I do things. And you can see me there masking out some areas for the tattoo because I thought I was going to do some tattoos, but this ended up just being a very, very focused piece. I don't think I'll actually go back and add the tattoos, but it would have been cool. So now you can see I'm getting into trying to block out some local values for the features. This is something that I just ended up not sticking with because for some reason it just made everything look super dull when I overlaid it. So yeah, sorry, this is kind of a waste, but at least you can see like this technique is worthwhile doing, for a lot of different painting strategies. But for me in this case with this kind of value study that this is, I decided to just leave them out. And yeah, in case you didn't already notice from the thumbnail, this is just going to be a value study. I decided, it's really the forms and the lighting that I really love about Ahmed's work, and coloring would just add another dimension to this that would have just taken way, way too long. So I decided to just focus on values today. Now you can see what I'm doing is I'm adding some really, really dark ambient occlusion to areas where I are super, super dark and I want a lot of contrast. And as you can see, like I love how it looks when I get rid of that, those colors that I put or the local values that I put down. So you'll see me getting rid of that at some point. Now I'm starting to just add some self shadows here mixed with some shadows loosely informed from the reference. Well, it's pretty strictly tied to the reference here, but you'll see I start to kind of get creative at some point with this because at this point in the painting, I thought I was just going to do this portrait for the video, but I decided to add another character. And so here, I didn't really want to have the faces blown out, so I'm adding some shadows in just where I feel like look good. After doing, a certain amount of studies, you'll kind of develop that sense for yourself. And here you can see it just has this nice kind of like clay look to it. Once I got rid of those values, it's just so appealing to me. So I decided to keep that. Here I'm trying to refine those ambient occlusion lines. They're a little bit too abrupt. So I wanted to finesse them a little bit more and have them flow a little bit better with the sketch. And if you didn't notice already, I had decreased the opacity for the sketch. I'm really happy with how this video turned out because you can actually, if you really want to, you can see exactly what I do with the layers. And so the video is kind of long because of that. But hey, I think it's super helpful to be able to have something like this. So here I'm trying to really emphasize it. I'm looking at some league stuff and I may be like, oh, how are you studying Ahmed right now? But this is mostly for aesthetics. This is just personally, I'm really, really in love with the style that Riot Games has for their splash arts. So that's something that I always have, in my references. Right now, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just continuing to fix up the shadows a little bit, adding a little bit darker ones here and there, always zooming in and out. You can see in my workflow nowadays, I have the navigator, which is just the full screen version of the painting up all the time. And it's there to help keep me from going way too much into the values. A lot of times what actually happens is I'll I'll focus in on something too much, or I won't pay attention to how it looks as a thumbnail, and that really, really, really messes things up for me. So for me, I really recommend doing that. Also, flipping the canvas back and forth really helps. Now you can see I'm getting in some more serious shadows there. That shadow for the neck is really, really nice and helps make the face stand out. And you can see here I'm still trying to figure out my layers, get those organized. My strategy for this, by the way, is to have the silhouette that I did in the beginning as one layer, and then above that I had my ambient occlusion layers set to multiply and also set to clip to the layer below, and then I also had my sketch layer to kind of a lower, like maybe 30 to 50% opacity above everything that I would eventually merge. Here you can see I decided to add in some tears here. Oh, I forgot about that one tear on her coming out of the far corner of her eye. I don't think I actually gave that one any detail in the final. Here I couldn't help myself. I decided to jump into the reflections here a little bit now, and some highlights. Really, really pops, really makes it look nice. For me, my personal aesthetic is really something like this, where I have very, very subtle self shadows, and then what I have is some really nice highlights that really make things pop. And then, yeah, and then you have your dark ambient occlusion. I really like this look overall. It tends to be a little bit too airbrushy, and so I'm trying to figure out how to, fix that, and that's part of why I'm doing this study. So you can see here I'm doing a kind of intermediate step where I'm adding the lighting in. And so this is a very crucial part where I'm trying to channel Ahmed right now, where I'm using a smooth watercolor brush from Clip Studio, and it's set to where if you use it softly, it blends, but if you press hard, it has a hard edge. And so I'm trying to paint and sculpt that way. And you can see here I finally have some of Ahmed's work in my references on the left side of the screen, so that I can use that as a reference. By the way, the app I'm using on the left side of the screen is called PureRef, and I can just drag and drop images from any browser or my computer file system and use them for reference and save it, and just have tons of references right there that I can just move around and look at. So at this point I decided to do a second one. I don't know why I did this. I guess I kind of felt like I wanted to make this study a little bit more interesting. And for some reason I decided to do this one without doing the silhouette. And that's not really a problem, but it's just weird because I'm trying to do this study, right? But I guess I just wanted to shake it up a bit. But I'm saying that because this ended up being super, super difficult for me. I just did not like how she looked for the longest time. I kept trying to work on it. The body went by quickly as always, but the face took me so much effort, right? So here I'm doing kind of this mirrored pose. I thought that was really cool. And then I realized the model that I'm looking at for reference, by the way, which is from Pinterest, is the same model, because I noticed from the tattoos, I was like, wow, this is an interesting coincidence here. So I was like, okay, let me just make her look at the other one, right? And maybe she'll give her a reason that she's crying or something. I don't know. So I was thinking maybe this will be her being mean, and she'll be like, squinting her eyes. And I was thinking, okay, how can that convey something that would make her sad? And I was like, oh, let's call this piece like rejection, right? So it's like her other self rejecting herself. And then I was just thinking about this whole like nice little poetic description for this painting. So that's how I usually do things when it comes to works that I care about more. Everything evolves as the painting goes on, and nothing is really set in stone in the beginning. So really quickly, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Skillshare, the sponsor of this video. They are an online platform where tons of people are creating thousands of courses for people like you and me to learn different topics. They can range from all kinds of artistic things like illustration, graphic design, game design, all the way into things that are even not really specific to art. For me, one of the courses that I really recommend are anything from Gabrielle Bricky. She has lovely, lovely tutorials and courses on learning how to draw stylized faces, which is something that I really, really enjoyed to help me figure out, get into drawing faces faster, which, relies on understanding shapes rather than all of the super nitty-gritty details about the anatomy. So thanks to Skillshare, the first 1,000 people who click the link in the description box or pinned comment below will get a free 2-month subscription to Skillshare where you can check out all of the content. And even if you don't, there is a super, super cheap fee for all of that. So I really, really recommend you guys check it out. It's a great place to start improving your artwork. Here you can see me bringing that navigator back in to the center of the canvas, and that's because I'm working on a Wacom Cintiq Pro. That's the 32-inch model, and it's really big, so when my navigator is all the way at the top right of the screen, it's hard for me to see things the way, see these values. So I decide to kind of bring it in there, and I keep it on the screen really close, and it's super, super helpful. I'm still massaging her face here, always changing like the shape of the jaw. That's always tricky for me. Super happy with the body now. Even now, several hours later looking at it, I'm still happy with it. But it's just that face. That face is just so tricky sometimes. You can see me, what I'm doing here with the eyes is something that I stole from Kushinavilla. I love like exaggerating the kind of disc shape of the iris and making the pupils deeper than the rest of the iris. It's kind of like a cone shape inside of the eye. So I love really exaggerating that with my placement and shape for the pupil. Here I'm finally getting a little bit happier with the drawing. For me, also, something that is really more of my own thing that I'm doing is I really love, like once I do a sketch and a drawing, I love how that looks. And I notice with a lot of artists, when you look at the sketch and you look at the rendering, I always find myself liking the sketch more. And I'm just super stubborn in the fact that when there's a sketch I fall in love with that I like and I want to start rendering it, I always keep the sketch available because I don't want to ever kind of fall away from that. And it took me forever to, just not just have the line art above my painting, right? But now through this, I was able to kind of discover a way, how do I keep that line art, quote unquote line art, and actually have my work reflect what I want in the sketch rather than just let it go its own way. Now, sometimes you could say that would be a good thing because the painting is just evolving on its own. But for me, when I like the sketch, I want it to be what other people see. So now I've got the black background or the really dark gray background, and now I'm trying to fill in this space best as I can to get back to the same level of polish as the girl on the left side of the canvas. So this time again, I'm starting off with some really tight ambient occlusion. I should start doing that here in a moment once I figure out my layers. And here we are, starting off with the inner part of the eyes again, and the nose, corners of the mouth. Sometimes I do a little bit of the insides of the lips to show that the mouth is slightly open, but I think I wanted it to be tight here. I think I got rid of it, might not have, but keeping them tight really kind of emphasizes that kind of sneering look, that kind of look of disgust that I wanted her to have, but it kept it subtle, we got to keep the beauty in there. I'm really, really loving how the sketch lines on the left one are looking when they're overlapping or under the highlights. And I really, really like seeing that kind of stuff in Ahmed's work. And so that's something I wanted to keep. Now I'm working on the ambient occlusion again, / self shadows. I hope my S's aren't too much. I don't know why my S's come off so sharp on the microphone, but there's nothing I can do about it. At this point here, you can see I made that shading on the sides of her face, and it was way too V-shaped. She looked like an elf, like an insanely, just like 100% pure blood elf right there. So I was like, I decided to really pull that back and blend it away. Always flipping my canvas, and I think what happens here, I don't know if you'll see it on this one, but I actually end up changing the shape. Yeah, so I'm painting the face, changing that shape a little bit more. And then on another part of the painting, I don't know where I did it, but I select and scale up or down the size of one of the features, just because, you know, as you paint, it seems inevitable, but eventually you'll realize something that was wrong in the sketch as you paint. And so I end up changing the sketch a little bit. Now, this is one area that I'm sure I didn't address yet, but I'm sure you noticed. So what I ended up doing was like, all right, I don't feel like drawing clothes for this. So I just decided to draw her naked, just like, well, not the one on the left, but she's pretty much naked compared to the girl on the left. And I didn't have a reference for this other than that one girl that Ahmed, that one mermaid, that, yeah, right there. And so it was not the same lighting scenario at all, but I tried my best to kind of make it like that. Okay, you can see me kind of fixing that area where I shrunk the mouth a little bit. So, but yeah, I ended up having a ton of trouble on the breasts. That was really difficult for me. I still don't think it's right. So I just had to resort to, okay, what kind of looks cool in that area at the very end? But yeah, that was tough. You'll see me working that area a lot. So now what you see me doing is something that I know Ahmed does, which is using bigger brushes, using some sharper edges in his works. And so I'm trying to do that now. And so you can see me carving that triangle out, that Rembrandt triangle on her cheek there. And I really, really wanted that to be harsh and to be, you know, very cut, even though I do blend it just there, because I want to have some areas where, you know, I do a lot of airbrushing, I know, with my work, but I also wanted to have it, you know, soft. You can see what I did there with the cheek there. I made that hard stroke and then I blended out the outer edge of it. That is a technique that will take you very, very far if you're painting. A lot of artists do that, especially with the lasso tool. You can combine that for a lot of really cool effects. But I just like to, that's why I love Clip Studio, because what I can do is, again, I can set the hardness and then I can press hard for a hard edge. And then when I press lightly, it becomes almost like mixed with a blending brush. So it's great. So here I'm blending some of those tones away, still looking pretty good. Everything, at this point, I'm thinking the way the ambient shadow part is going on this one is way better than the one on the left. Now I'm going in with the highlights again. I feel like I need a little bit more practice with highlights because it was still really, really challenging for me in this piece. And then I'm starting to carve out and really make this thing feel like I'm working with clay by adding in that second layer of highlighting there. Or the lighting, actually. And you can see here, I just could not figure out how the lighting should have been on the boobs if it's coming from the right. So my logic was like, okay, the one closer to her arm should have more light because it's kind of like directly in front since she's at an angle. And then the other one on her left would be more kind of a rim light scenario where the light would curve around it. That's what I was thinking, but it just didn't end up looking the way I wanted it to. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it was fine now and I overthunk it, but I don't know. You can see me here like thinking, okay, I want to change the lighting on the left one. So I want to start adding some light there to her to suggest that it's coming from the right side. And something that you'll see on Ahmed's work is he'll have a lot of really, really intense highlights, but also this really nice milky kind of translucent way that he'll shade skin in particular that I really love. And I'll do it no matter what, just because that's like the aesthetic I like. It doesn't matter what scenario, what lighting scenario there is. I love rendering skin that way. You can see me trying to use the lasso tool to carve out that shape for her right boob, but still doesn't look good. This is why you do your studies for, you know, your sphere and stuff like that. That way you can figure these things out mentally. And you can see here the forms of her chest and her clavicle are really coming together nicely. I'm getting a lot more confident painting those things. You know, this is how you should paint these things instead of painting in, you know, lines, like a little upside down check mark. That's not going to look good for your neck. Don't do that. I will roast you in that if you come up with my video. In my next roasting video, probably at 400K, or if you redeem that on my Twitch, I will come after you for that. Don't do it. Shade the clavicles properly. And now you can see I added some highlights on the body. So I have this rugged airbrush that I made in Clip Studio, and I'm adding that to the arm like you can see in the bottom left reference. And I added that to both of their arms and added some rim lighting there. Probably way too much light there in between the breasts, but it looked cool, so I left it there. And I added some highlights to her clavicles on the girl on the right as well. Again, it's probably a little bit overkill, but I felt like it looked pretty good. Which is something I keep saying, but as you do more and more studies, your eye for your artistic eye will improve, right? And you want to allow yourself to be free with that, and that will help give you your own style, right? So now I'm trying to add some shadow and some shading to the hair. To be completely honest, I did not want to focus too much on the hair. Right now you can see what I'm doing is I'm trying to make the eyes feel three-dimensional. So I give them all shading, blend out the details I did, and then bring them back in. That way when I add the highlights, they actually have more pop. As you can see with a lot of the mermaids that Ahmed painted, their eyes were just a very, very subtle, almost jelly-like looking substance that was very dark. And then when he put the highlight on top, it just looked great, right? It looks so realistic. So that's kind of what I was going for in this case. Now that I think about it, I want to maybe play with the idea of making one of the girl's eyes dark. That might look really cool. Unfortunately, you guys won't see me paint that because I'm already recording the voiceover. So yeah, back to the hair. I just wanted to I definitely have room to get better because you can still paint hair in a very loose way that's still looking good, as you can see the way Ahmed did it. But I was just really focusing on the concepts here. So how does he think and work with lighting? How does he work with his brush strokes, right? And so overall, I wanted to focus on that and not do the way I do things normally. And I think I'm pretty happy with the result, but the hair, yeah, definitely the weakest place for me in this painting. Adding some highlight to her eyelashes because I want them to look like they're capturing a lot of the light, which happens on the actual reference. You can see in the kind of bottom center of the screen for the reference side. I really, really love that look. And you can see the sense of light is really starting to come through on the portrait on the right, whereas the left, it still kind of looks like there's another light lighting her up. And so what's happening now is I decided to try to really focus on this and make it feel more like a painting. And so I was like, how do I get some grunge, some effects into the background? And I tried my best with this, but it didn't really come out that well. It's still there. I still like it better than just having a straight up, dark gray or black background. But yeah, this is just something I tried to fake, but I'm not too sure how it came out. And with this, I wasn't really happy with the values. I was like, okay, this is cool, but it's still too bright. So I wanted to do some tonal curves to kind of change it up. And so what I end up doing a lot is clamping the values, which can tend to be bad or be good depending on what you like and how subtle you are with it. So I decided to just mess with the layers as well, levels as well, to get more and more depth to it. So I had a really dark background, so it felt more like the references that I really loved from Ahmed's work. You can see here now that I messed with some of the values, going back to paint some stuff, and I don't know if you noticed now, but the values in her face are just crazy. There's just the value change for certain areas is just way too intense. If you look at the navigator, the girl on the left looks pretty good, but the one on the right is just like there's random super dark areas like on her left eye, and on the side of her nose and shadow, and the chin. It's just like they read as pure black. They don't read as a darker area. They just read way, way too dark. Look at her arm. There's this dark line there. All that stuff it doesn't really look appealing. It's really bringing this down. I didn't really notice that until very late when I was, trying to compile the footage. So you can see me here now. I'm adding some more highlights to the hair. I really wanted to make the hair look a little bit like I tried, like somewhat decent. But yeah, that's definitely something I need to practice. The girl on the left isn't too bad, but yeah, the one on the right, she started getting out of control with the values, and so I ended up while I was waiting for this footage to transcode, I ended up going back in and fixing that. So unfortunately, I didn't film all of it. I filmed probably 75% of it, and so I'm going to show you that really sped up at the very end here in a minute, and then I'll show you the before and after results so you can see. And so what I did basically was like, try to really channel this and pretend like I'm Ahmed doing a paint over of my own work and be like, okay, what did I miss here? And that was big shapes. I missed out on having bigger value shapes and allowing the value changes to do the work for me and not have to be so blunt. So if the side of her face is darker, you don't have to go all the way to the black. You can just go a little bit darker than everything else, and that is going to look way more realistic, way better, and our eyes can pick that up. You can see here I'm playing with clamping the highlights and the values even more, making them look almost metallic or super oily, which is cool because with all this stuff, doing that kind of wet look makes things more realistic. But eventually I decide to focus on these shapes and really focus on how can I rediscover the shapes in their faces, in their bodies, even in the hair, and pull that out really quickly so that this can read a lot better from a distance and a thumbnail. So as we're getting closer to the end, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this has helped you out. Please let me know what you guys think about this series. This is kind of the second video in this series. Let me know what you think if you already know about Ahmed Aldoori and what your perspective on this type of painting strategy is, where you're focusing really intensely on values and your brush strokes and leaving the sketch in and line art versus your final painting and all that. I'd love to hear that from you all. And remember to check out Skillshare. Link will be in the description box and in the pinned comment below. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.